3, 2, we are ready to go, Chris.
All right, man. How are you doing, Mr. Craig Graves?
Dude, I'm doing good, man.
Said you was a little tired.
Well, just a touch, maybe, but overall, life is good.
All right, man. Well, welcome to another edition of Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast. We invite you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist. Creating emotional growth is the hope through the medium of this podcast, being aware it's not a delivery of therapy services of any kind. Feedback and discussion on contact at throughatherapisteyes.com. The human emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together. We're going to do this sponsor thing without any mistakes this time whatsoever. You think we can handle that, man?
Yeah, I think we can.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm confident.
Let's go.
I'm confident.
Let's go slow, man. hanksrealitygroup.com.
Very good, sir.
Good. And the email address. You ready?
Yeah.
Do it.
Matthew at hanksrealitygroup.com.
Woohoo! I think that's first, brother.
All of your real estate needs.
In the Gaston County, Charlotte area. They do a great job. We appreciate their support. And we also have metpsych.com through Metrolina Psychotherapy Associates in Belmont. Their number 704-461-8253. Which, fun fact, man, I'm like 4 up on you. We need to...
No, I think I was last. I don't think we did one on the service dog show, did we?
Yeah, but I had like 4 in a row, man.
Nah, don't be pulling that stuff.
Yeah, man, I did.
Don't be pulling that.
Yeah, I did.
No, man. So, fun fact. You know what? I wasn't prepared to give a fun fact. I could have sworn it was your turn.
Always be prepared, man.
So, here's a fun fact. My daughter competes in karate, and she won a gold medal at the national championship in long weapons 2 weeks ago. And she won a silver medal in sparring.
So if you announce that to the world over the country in whatever 2 shows in a row, do you think that makes you bragging?
Did I do it last time? I might be bragging.
I think you
Dang
did.
right I am.
Yeah, you should, man.
Well, I mean, you did. You put me on the spot. I didn't think it was my turn, so I'm digging.
Well, I think that I think I'm going to acknowledge something that I think is cool. We have a dream. Maybe we'll be in New York, Madison Square Garden, doing a show in front of people through a therapist's eyes in a few years. What do you think? I think we have somebody hanging with us, a buddy of ours, and so it's kind of cool, man. We got an
audience.
We got an audience today, man.
A live
Welcome,
audience,
brother.
Of course, we have our audience is our listeners, but we have a live audience tonight.
Yeah. So
here's a fun fact. Did I talk about Chicago?
A little bit.
So I went to Chicago in June and trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at Carlson Gracie headquarters. Carlson Gracie Jr., his grandfather is one of the Gracie brothers that invented the art. So we were at his school in Chicago training Jiu-Jitsu. It was really a great experience, man. Great people. Chicago is an awesome city, man.
His dojo is called The Art? What did you...
No, his grandfather is one of the creators of the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, man.
Oh, sorry, I need to get my spectacles, man. I had to get my glasses. I forgot. The whole art. Wow. That's pretty crazy cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty neat.
Yep.
Let me ask you a question, Chris.
Did I talk about Chicago? Chicago's a cool city. Got any listeners to Chicago? You live in a great city, man.
Do we have ADD from last show?
I don't know. It all runs together, bro.
So let me ask you a question, man. When you're out there on the mat rolling around and everything, do you ever doubt your abilities? Do you ever doubt your expertise? Do you ever feel like
absolutely.
I'm not good enough, or I'm
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You may have something called the Imposter Syndrome.
Well, I'm interested to hear what the Imposter Syndrome is. Jiu-Jitsu is a funny thing because some nights you feel like you're really making progress, you're really doing well, and then other nights, man, it's like, good grief, I should turn my belt in and take up knitting or something,
Right. But, it's funny because I think, well, maybe it comes to my mind now, so I'll say it. Somewhere along in these show notes as we go along here, I don't do a lot of online looking, and, I do really kind of pondering show organization and show prep, but I'll pop on to Google, so I find different things. But I just want the audience to know, like, I don't spend a whole lot of time doing research on that stuff, but I'll pop on and I'll see cool things and stuff will pop out at me. And actually, we're going to talk about one of these articles I got on my computer here in a little while. But 70% studies have shown people are found to have what is referred to as the imposter syndrome. That's that's a high percentage.
70% of people have
70% is what they allotted to. It'll be on the show notes.
Okay.
I don't know where that comes from. I'm not going to try to back that up. But if anybody can make that claim, 70% of anybody has anything, like that's a big statement. And as we go along, talking about what the heck's going on with this thing called imposter syndrome, I think that I could see that that's the case. But you said before the mics are on, you've never heard of this before?
No.
Never heard of it?
Not imposter syndrome, no.
I'm going to ask our audience. You can give us a head shake. Have you ever heard of it? You told me before you have not. Our audience and co-hosts, never heard of this. Maybe I live in some sort of crazy psychology world, man. I don't know. I thought that was
Well, you do, bro. You're a therapist, man.
Wow. So Psychology Today helps us out with a definition. They say, quote, a psychological term referring to a pattern of behavior where people doubt their accomplishments and have persistent, often internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud.
Okay, now hold on. That makes some more sense. I thought you meant people were actively out saying they were something they were not, or portraying themselves maybe on social media as something they're not. So yeah, what you're saying is people think that they're not an expert or knowledgeable about a topic or whatever when they really are.
Right, they really are.
Okay, yeah, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah. That's funny. So when I told you the topic, I emailed you. We didn't see the email. So when I told you this topic tonight, you were probably like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Wow, that's hysterical.
I had no idea it was going in this direction.
That's hysterical. So the audience knows, like, you're kind of coming cold a lot of times, really and truly.
Yeah.
You're thinking that.
Yeah, I didn't even know the topic until today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny because, so you've heard of that concept, but maybe not the term.
I think a lot of people probably put themselves into that category. I don't know a whole lot, when they really are pretty knowledgeable about something.
Well, here's the thing. The imposter syndrome doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Not in my view. It's not really a thing.
So is it a thing?
It's not really a thing. It's I was just looking at the other day what we were going to do because, last show. What was the last show?
Last show was on Service Dogs.
Service Dogs.
If you hadn't heard that one, go listen to it.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was cool.
That was really neat. I mean, to tease the audience with that, man, we actually saw a service dog in action sort of saving our guest, right?
Maybe not saving, but helping.
Yeah, okay. Good point. Good differential.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, to be honest, when you talked about doing a show on Service Dogs, I was thinking, oh, man, this is going to stink. This ain't going to be a good show. But it was one of my favorites, man. It was good. I'm
surprised that you thought that. Because, and I'm glad. I knew it's an interesting topic because I do deal with it, man. I mean, it comes up in my office from time to time. People want me to write letters. They're taking stuff on airplanes, but it's also about they need it. I mean, like I shared on the show last week, man, these guys that are in the military can get great help from that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, the idea here is that it's not really, it's kind of cool when my mental health and substance abuse field sort of intersects, with pop culture and whatnot. Like I love the fact that we have these terms and these things that people say and, these things that are out there that are really of a psychological nature. Like it used to be, dude, like when I was new into this field even, you just didn't talk about it. You didn't hear those things. Started to get with like Growing Pains. Remember that show?
Yeah. Ricky Schroeder, was that his show?
Yeah. It was, things like that started to come in the 80s, but now I kind of feel like you get these things that people readily talk about. At least I thought that you two didn't even know what this was, but people have talked about this as like a total thing, and I do want to blow up the idea that like that's not something that I diagnose. It's not a syndrome. It's not something that people have. It's really.
Is it like a condition in the book or whatever?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Book you guys have?
It's none of that.
Okay.
It's none of that. Like remember we talked about agoraphobia. That actually has some definitive characteristics and symptoms and whatever that we look for. This doesn't even have that.
Okay.
Like I can't diagnose agoraphobia. It's more like a component of anxiety. This is another component of an anxiety experience that people will have, but it's even under agoraphobia.
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's probably some real anxiety there. Well, I'm going to be exposed as a fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you led me perfectly into little ways. We're going to talk about the fact that's actually it. Realize that this is usually really a part of, when it's disruptive enough in life that's causing problems, it's more than likely a part of another type of anxiety issue. You've heard some of these. OCD, right?
Yeah.
When you're OCDing about stuff, you're dialing in, needling into the gross details of things, and you're obsessed about that. You might have an imposter syndrome kind of experience. If you have social phobia, you freak out in public places, or you don't want to go, to parties or in groups of people or meeting new people, job interview and whatnot. Well, if you have social phobia, you're definitely going to experience imposter-like feelings, like I don't know what I'm really talking about or doing.
Mm-hmm.
And agoraphobia, goes along with it. So, and other specific anxieties is probably really much more a part of that than anything, when it's disruptive enough.
Okay.
But we're not going to have it. I can't diagnose it. It's not something that we can diagnose. But it's interesting because it started to get talked about in the 1978. I didn't know it went back that far. You ever hear of Pauline Clance?
No.
You ever hear of Susan Ames?
Nope.
I actually think I may have heard of her. Anyway, they found that despite having adequate external evidence of accomplishments, people with imposter syndrome remain convinced that they don't deserve the success they have. And I think that they were clinical psychologists, particularly at the time, really looking at women. Like this kind of got its birth, if you will, kind of looking at women and women kind of struggling to, I don't know, find their place in society at the time. What was that, 78? So they were, kind of coming into being more dual earner families and all that. And so they were looking at that and found this and coined the term. So now we have the imposter syndrome.
So there's a term, there's a thing, it's just not really a condition.
Correct.
Interesting.
Correct. 5 different types. All right. I never heard of this before. So
before you move on, is it more prevalent in women now?
No. They made a point somewhere along in my musings on the internet that, how did they put it? Again, it seems like I didn't know this. This is, yeah. I mean, they started out with women, and then now we find, come on, dudes feel this constantly as well. So they may have.
Well, yeah, I was going to say it. I would think that it'd go both ways, but when you said something there earlier, made me think maybe it was more prone toward women, but
yeah,
that's not the case.
Nah, I don't think so. They started looking at it in that direction, but then very clearly, as it began to be thought about and interviewed on and talked about, it's clearly goes way around gender. As honestly, I find, incidentally, as a complete side note, most things do. Have you noticed that yet in our conversations?
What's that? That things really aren't gender-based or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of a bunny hole, I guess, but it's a side shoot. I really have not found a lot of things. I'll probably be crucified with some people. Counselors will call in a show and probably, what? When you look at mental health and emotions and feelings and whatnot, I do not find that there are many types of things that grossly weigh one way or the other with the genders. I mean, we have gender-specific statistics in our diagnostic book. Maybe I need to start paying attention to that a little bit more. But these things really are kind of most. Can I make the statement that most mental health and substance abuse concepts are really generalized over the genders?
Yeah, you can make that statement. You can say whatever you want to.
Would I be crazy to make the statement? Blah, 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 blah. For instance, we used to really think of substance abuse, addiction issues. Man, only dudes have that. Remember the myths when we were a kid? What your image of an alcoholic would look like?
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a girl.
Yeah.
It was a dude.
Yeah.
And they were usually a street person. And they had a long beard and a trench coat and a brown paper bag.
Yeah.
Unemployed homeless person. I mean, that was always a dude. Well, now we know that absolutely women have, issues. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think I told a story one time about being on in a jury pool, and the guy was accused of trafficking drugs or something like that, and possession of a firearm. And
I think I remember that.
one of the questions I asked the jury pool was, "Do you know anybody that's been affected by substance abuse?" And I think I told you I couldn't count everybody that I knew on my fingers and toes. And like you're saying, I mean, that list is male and female.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not a bunch of dudes and one girl who's had an issue, at least from my experience in my world.
Yeah, I mean, even like sexual abuse. There's an idea that high amounts of statistics of women that have been offended in dating issues or rape or those types of things. And like dudes have as much sexual abuse history, as do women, and we just don't talk about it.
Wow.
Right? I mean, it's just not like, no, I can't have that. So they would never report or talk about. Now we know, like, absolutely, and we're seeing a lot of it come out nowadays.
Yeah.
You notice that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny to me the way that we just have taken in the historical factor of an issue. Thus, imposter syndrome would be part of that. We start out and we genderize it. Genderize it? Is that a word? Genderize?
It is now.
There you go. We genderize the thing, and then we kind of find out later on that no, that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
So that's what happened with this imposter syndrome. Check this out, though. They came up with 5 different sort of, I don't know, themuse.com. Is that a viable resource to put on here? The Muse?
I don't know.
You ever heard of themuse.com?
No. Is that a spoof? One of those sites?
Could be, but they credited Dr. Valerie Young as an expert. So, yeah, they had a professional on there.
Okay.
Dr. Valerie Young. You ever heard of her?
No.
Oh,
I can look her up real quick.
Yeah, man, Google her. It's not worth it. Don't worry about it. It was the 5 that she came up with, though. The perfectionist is a type of imposter. And, I hearken that to OCD, where you're dialing into this being perfect and that being perfect, and I can't be perfect, so I must not be right. I'm not good enough because I can't get it exactly the way that it's supposed to be. So the perfectionist is one drive with this imposter syndrome. The next one she identified was the superwoman or superman. So like, you're going to be the man that takes care of everything and provides everything and does everything, or the woman that cares for everything and, meets all the needs of people. And, this sort of expectation that you place on yourself creates this imposter syndrome. Third one, and I needed help from their information, so I actually wrote more, right? The natural genius type of imposter syndrome. They judge their confidence based on ease and speed, and this is off their site because I didn't understand these next 3 quite so well. They judge their competence based on ease and speed as opposed to their efforts, right? So in other words, if they take a long time to master something, they feel shame. So the natural genius, these are people that are really super smart. You ever come across many people like that?
A couple.
They're amazing. The way they think.
Right.
It's I don't know. They're on a different. They think differently. Well, one of the things is they really pick up information so much so quick, and when they struggle with that, clearly they suck, right? So you fall into this imposter type anxiety.
The person. So when you're talking about these perfectionists and what were the others?
Superman, Superwoman.
So these people are feeling this imposter anxiety.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Those sound like personality types to me.
Kind of can correlate to that.
You know?
Which we need to do a show on that and blow those up too a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no expert, but I've taken the Myers-Briggs and the DISC and some others, Those things are incredibly accurate, man.
Well, it's funny because they kind of are, and I've always loved them. I always thought they were kind of cool. And this will be a teaser for that particular show, but I actually, of all the places, on Stuff You Should Know, I listen to podcasts now, right?
Yeah.
Well, they had one on those personality inventories, and honestly, it made me feel differently about the validity of those things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's just basically people that kind of sat down and thought about these things and these traits that people have and kind of categorized people from that. So
they're putting a skeptical kind of twist on it?
yes.
Okay. It'd be interesting to hear that.
As do I now.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to hear that because a lot of people use those personality profiles.
They are very popular.
Yeah.
And people make a lot of money going and doing presentations on them and stuff.
And they seem to be very accurate. I mean,
And
they
they
really, really do. When you read those things back, it's like, holy cow, this is me.
And don't get me wrong, they really do have some characteristics to categorize people, but essentially that's all it is.
And the thing about it, the thing that makes me, I'll have to go listen to that show. But like I've taken the disc 3 times, and it's almost always the same.
Yeah.
And I've taken it years apart, and it's come back eerily similar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you would think that if it was a fraud, then you'd get a different result every time.
Yeah, I don't want to give any idea that those things are fraudulent or totally off base. They're not.
I don't think they are either.
I've always loved them my whole career, honestly, until this year. But then I've begun to think about the engulfment and the abandonment personalities as well. And that simplifies it down into 2 instead of
those are kind of personality profiles, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what imposter syndrome kind of is.
Yeah.
That was getting back to my point.
Yeah.
And they've got these 5 types. You know, take it for what it's worth. It's just kind of different tendencies people have. The next one there is the soloist, right? Sufferers who feel as though asking for help reveals their phoniness. So this is another way or another type of imposter syndrome. And the last one is the expert. Didn't you say you always say things right before the mics come on? You might be the expert type imposter
I'm not the
syndrome
expert
person.
at all. No. Define the expert.
The expert, they say, measure their competence based on what and how much they know or can do. Believing they'll never know enough, they fear being exposed and inexperienced or unknowledgeable.
No, I've always considered myself, and maybe this is part of my imposter syndrome.
There you go.
I've always considered myself like a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about a lot of stuff, but not a lot about anything.
What is it? Jack of all trades and a master of none?
Yeah.
That's the way I've thought of myself.
That's kind of how, I mean, I can put together some audio and throw a podcast out, but I'm not like the mix master editor deal.
Yeah.
You're
pretty good, man.
I don't know.
We got good digs. We get good sound. Studio.
See, now I think I'm going to be exposed as an imposter.
That's a fear.
For this little, setup we got here.
No, man, we had somebody compliment. Remember who was it? It was an MJ, man. She was like, I'm just impressed with the equipment.
No, that was Catherine Bond.
Oh, it was. That was Miss Bond.
She was impressed by our equipment.
Yeah. So where are we going to go from here? Let's move on to the fact that this is a real. I guess I want to make a strong point that this is, like a very common thing that people are feeling. And if we can realize that it's as common as I think it really is, then we can really begin to relax as a person, as a community, and as a society, really. Really, we're around the world now, right?
Yeah.
As a world, peoples, we can connect in Denmark, in Bolivia, in Guatemala, in Mexico, to Russia, to Sweden, to good old Belmont, North Carolina, with the idea that we all really get insecure about what we do, right? Mm-hmm. We all really doubt if we're good enough or if we do a good enough job, if we did enough, where we're faulty and where, these are feelings that are very, very common. And you can call them just insecurities. Who doesn't have insecurities? But yet, who will look at other people around them and feel like they don't feel that way? I'll tell you, it was in my personal life. It was a watershed moment. Now, I've thought of this before. I've shared it before with some people, but it was really cool because I don't know where it came from. Maybe a God flash. I don't know what it was, but in junior high we went through divorce, so it was kind of a tough time for me. Definitely had a lot of insecurities.
You got divorced when you were in junior high?
Yeah, my parents did. Come on,
okay.
man.
Sorry.
It's a good story, man. No, but there was a lot of insecurity that I had, and I was really having to work through. And for what I remember, the exact spot in the exact step that I was on the right side of the Triadelphia Junior High School building.
Dang, dude.
Yeah, man. It was a moment, and the moment was just a simple thought that many people probably have had, I guess. I don't know, but for me, it was a very powerful reality that just dawned on me literally from nowhere. Because I was feeling particularly bad one given day. I don't know what it was or what was bothering me or what was going on, but I just remember looking at the person who was closest to me, and I just looked at him and I thought, you know what? If I'm feeling the way I'm feeling now, I'm willing to make a bet that that person has felt like I feel now. Now, I have no idea if they did. I didn't ask them, that's for sure.
So you were in junior high when this thought came to you?
Junior high when this just popped at me, man. And it popped at me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've had some deep thoughts when you were younger. You said you said a couple things on this show, and I was like, really?
Really?
When you were in elementary school, you thought that? But that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about jiu-jitsu earlier, and me and one of the guys I train with, Ben Cosby, we were talking about preparing for competition. And so, like when you go to a competition, you're nervous about what you're going to do, and all these things are going through your head. And one of the points that Ben made was the other guy is experiencing the exact same anxieties and thoughts that you are.
Yeah.
So you think, oh, this guy's better than me. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. That guy's thinking the same thing about you.
Dead on.
I mean, about the match. He so you're both in the same boat at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was on the first flight of steps. On the second step, going down towards the door, that thought just flew at me, literally, I guess, from nowhere. I don't know, and that's cool that he's teaching that. And we
were just having a conversation, the two of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Craig's looking up at the sky with his dog barking in the background. we just had animal therapy, man. We need the animal therapy intervention.
My dog is not a service dog. I'm gonna
we gotta get her.
Tell you that right now.
We gotta get her trained up, man. So, wow, that is normal. Is everything all right? We need to push pause and check.
No, let's get after it.
All right. So where were we then? Yeah, very common. Yeah, I already said this on the get-go, but 70% of people really, experience this at some point in their life. And I guess maybe I stand corrected. As I'm looking at my show notes, it says studies suggest 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point in their career, right? So maybe this was specifically a business study or something. That they kind of pointed out. But dude, I might even suggest that 100% of people doubt their ability in something that they're doing, and that would be what?
Yeah, I would say that's probably pretty fair.
Yeah,
At some point, you're doubting your abilities. Yeah.
I mean, even like a narcissistic person, we have something called narcissistic personality disorder. Well, they'll be able. I mean, they doubt themselves, even though.
There's times when you're starting a new job or something like that, and you think that you're not doing a great job, but the boss and your friends and those kind of people are saying, "Hey, man, it sounds like you're doing a great job to me," but they think they're an imposter.
You were talking about that on the show with something, weren't you?
Yeah,
I feel like yeah,
I was. I think it was it the last show or the one on loneliness? I can't remember. But it's we were talking about the thoughts the things we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And people were talking you up, but you're not hearing that, and you're talking to yourself, talking down. So it was the self-talk example that we.
Yes, that's right.
We were talking about.
And actually, self-talk is on my list of how to manage. Good.
I was going to ask you how I manage this.
It's on there, man. Yeah. It's on there. So listen to this though. I've got my own personal theory that I've had for a long time, just in my own head. And this article, where did it come from? Well, the article title is Imposter Syndrome, a Sign of Greatness. So they're posing kind of a bit of a question. Yeah, is imposter syndrome a sign of greatness? By Olivia Goldhill. And this I found on whatever, quartz.com.
Greatness.
right?
That's an interesting question.
She-
I think it can be. I mean, before you get into
Go
your
ahead,
article
yeah.
there, I mean,
I need to
maybe
cue it up.
part of feeling like an imposter sometimes is just humility.
What do you mean?
Like, if somebody's talking to you about how great you are, and you're like, oh, no, that really ain't it. You're just being a humble person, right?
Right. That's an interesting thing. They're kind of correlated, humility and the imposter syndrome that we're talking about here being kind of correlated because you don't really see the high praise that you don't really see in yourself the high praise you're receiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Humility is usually thought of as a good thing, though, right?
I think humility is a great thing. Like if I ask you a question about therapy and you don't know the answer,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to respect you a lot more if you say, you know what, Craig? I don't know the answer, but I'll find out and get back to you. As opposed to you just pulling something out of your rear end and trying to make yourself sound smart.
Right.
Right. And if I find out you were wrong, or if I can tell that you're just pulling something out of your rear end, then I'm gonna that's just gonna blow it for me.
What's interesting there is I might suppose that somebody that's really struggling with this imposter syndrome stuff that are anxious and whatnot, they're not going to be as likely to own that they don't know that particular factor.
Yeah, I would.
Right?
I'm no expert, but I would. That makes sense.
Yeah,
somebody who don't want to be exposed as an imposter is going to make up some BS answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas some guy who don't care too much about that is going to say, "Look, man, I don't know, but I'll get back to you on it."
Yeah. Well, these guys talked about it as being a sign or an indicator of likely success, and that correlated with a long-term theory that I had with just people, I guess.
What did they say? Let's hear what they had to say. I mean, what's your theory? I guess.
Yeah. So, if you look at people that are generally highly successful, any kind of professional athlete on any major level, politicians or high executives with bank executives. I've always thought of these people as having, and I would always call it, a mental health condition or a mental health issue. So I would always kind of, for years and years and years now, thought like, what's going on for these people? Because if you are a famous musician, you have got to hit that guitar every single day. You've got to eat and breathe and just be nothing but that skill, developing that skill, hitting that skill, passionate about that skill, and doing nothing but that skill until that skill is amazing to be that good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Craig, are you going to do that with anything in your life? I'm not. I'm not going to be that dedicated to put in 19 hours a day at work to rise the ranks in your local Bank of America.
No.
I'm not going to sacrifice my family time for, 2 years, to run for high political office, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been aware of people that are able to do that or willing to do that have something going on that's driving them way harder than what typically people we driven with, and that's what these guys are talking about. They're talking about it's a sign of success. The more you feel anxious about your abilities, it drives you to get good at something. Therefore, the ultimate result is you get really good at something, but that's because you felt really afraid of being proven a fraud about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's got to be something that drives highly successful people, and I think that this is a part of it. Now, I know you listen to a lot of shows and think about success and hear people talking about that. I think that's fair to say. I've gotten to know you with that. What do you think about what I'm just saying?
Well, just about everybody that's successful that I listen to talks about having a strong why. What is your why? Why do you want this?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think it was Viktor Frankl, who was also a therapist, but also a Holocaust survivor. When he was in the concentration camps in Germany, in Nazi Germany, in Eastern Europe or whatever, Western Europe, Eastern Europe. Anyway,
right.
The people that survived concentration camps had a why. They had a reason to live once they got out of the camp.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've heard that too. Now that you're saying that, I've heard.
So
that.
I don't think everybody who's successful just doesn't want to be exposed as an imposter. There may be other reasons why they want that success. You know, I think that's probably the case with some folks.
Well, it's
but
definitely
not,
some. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, my son is. I've talked about him being a baseball player on the show before, and he didn't hit his growth spurt until a little bit later. So he's always smaller than the other kids. But man, he worked hard on his baseball game. You know, he'd be out there at 9:00 hitting off the tee.
Yeah.
And I asked him one night, and I said, "Dude, what's up? You know, you work your butt off. You know, what's driving you?" He said, "I don't want to suck."
Yeah.
That was his answer.
Yeah.
So perhaps, you know, that might be
a component.
But you know, if you're ultra successful and your why is I want my kids to have a better life than I had, or some other reason, you know, I watched the show on Winston Churchill over the weekend.
Oh, that had to be a good one.
Yeah, and apparently Churchill was a troubled kid. He would probably be on ADD medication if he were alive and a young kid today. But he was unruly. I
hear a dig on the psychopharmacology.
he was an unruly kid, and he got shipped off to boarding school, and his parents only came to see him once a year.
Really?
And his father had negative things to say about him, and
wow.
you know, and he never felt like his father loved him. So I think what drove Churchill and his success was he was trying to, and his father passed away, unfortunately, before Churchill became ultra successful.
I would love to see that show.
I'll give you the link to that. But the thing that drove Churchill was not being exposed as an imposter, and he had some huge failures. But I think his was trying to please his father, even though his father had passed away. You know.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, and get the idea. Which is interesting about this topic, and probably, I think part of my idea was to blow this idea up that there is such a thing as the imposter syndrome, because it's really much more complicated than that. I mean, these guys are talking about, so this 70% idea, you know, in some ways you just described, you know, what they're saying with, let me go back to it, right? A psychological term referring to a pattern of behavior where people doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent, often internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Well, we could continue that sentence, ... by their dad. Or ... by their mom.
Yeah.
Or, you know, what have you, by their boss or whomever.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure that it does drive some people. I have another example. Several years ago, probably 20 years ago, I got certified as a scuba diver, right? And the guy that was leading the class, he told me that anytime something about diving came up, he would pour himself into whatever that topic was until he was an expert on it, because he didn't want somebody to ask him a question and him not know the answer.
You mean a part of the topic of diving?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
If it had anything to do with diving,
he just had to know.
He just had to know everything there was about it, because he didn't want somebody saying, "Hey, how does this thing work?" or "What's this for?" or "How does And so he poured his heart and soul into finding out every fact he could about this thing, until he was a guru, because he didn't.
What they're talking about with the perfectionist.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, he didn't want anybody to say, "Hey, what is this?" and him say, "Well, I don't know."
Yeah, listen, it's this is so common. Sometimes it's severe. I'm going to say severe, and it drives you to be successful, like my supposition is with successful people. But other times it's not. It's not as severe, and we manage it. But again, is it universal? Does this hit everybody on some level? We're probably really all on that continuum.
I guess it depends on how you look at it,
Yeah, and that's what this is. This isn't a science-based studied syndrome or diagnosis. It's a part of a component of.
Maybe you could say the thing that
somewhere.
Drove Churchill was he didn't want to be exposed as an imposter to his father.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That's why I read that sentence again and suggested, like I don't want to be exposed as a fraud to my dad. So, or some high school. I mean, Michael Jordan talks about, not get, what was he? not on the varsity team in his high school basketball.
I think he was cut from the JV or the middle school team or something.
I think he was cut.
Yeah.
And so and you'll hear athletes talk about that, Craig. Like they find that person who said they can't do it, and they're going to jump in front of that and prove that they can. I mean, that's their why, if you will.
Yeah.
That's going to drive success, and it's a powerful motivational thing. So this article, and my belief, is that can be harnessed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it could be harnessed, and I think it's not a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing.
If we didn't have that mentality, we wouldn't have Michael Jordan or Winston Churchill or whatever. I just don't think it's always the case. Like I talked about Frankel. Frankel's why was he wanted to see his wife again, who unfortunately did not make it.
The Nazi camp.
Yeah. Dude, you got to read that book, man. You're a therapist, man. You got to read Frankel's book.
Yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, he wanted to see his wife, and he would visualize her when he was out there in the sub-zero temperatures digging a hole in boots that had holes in them. He would visualize his wife, and that's what helped him get through those days.
Yes.
And he also had a book that he was working on, and those Nazi bastards took the book from him and ripped it up. When they confiscated all of his stuff, but it was in his mind.
Yeah.
And so in his mind, he wanted to see his wife, and he had this gift he was going to give to the world, this book he was going to write. And he used those two things. That was his why, which allowed him to endure the death camps.
Wow. Yeah, I do want to read that book, and I want to watch that video that you mentioned. Both of those sound very powerful. And you're right. I see and agree totally that. Hey, that was Ryan. I see and agree totally.
You're a poet and you don't know it.
Just comes at me sometimes, man. I do. I think you're totally right and onto it, that there are other forces, other sort of emotional forces that, that can rival, things like anxiety. But, anxiety gets a bad name. And one of the cool things about anxiety is that we wouldn't want to just get rid of it. I mean, in a sense, that guy had a tremendous amount of anxiety, I would argue. And that anxiety was, what am I going to do? I want to see my wife again. I want to get there. I need to get there. I have to get there. I will get there. And that's a drive. That's an energy, that I might argue is harnessing this idea of knowing enough and doing enough and being enough and doing a good enough job, or getting there, getting to where I want to be, getting to where I want to be back to, whatever that might be. I mean, I feel like that can really be harnessed and be the driver to success. Anxiety, in a form, can drive success. And I loved the way that they wrote about that in this little article thing, and I've always kind of thought that. I think it's a big part of what helps people get there, wherever there is for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it, man. I've never thought about looking at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm running through examples in my mind of people that are very successful I've heard their why, and a lot of it could be translated into what you're saying.
I think so.
I think there's definitely an anxiety about failure. And I think failure is probably part of the process. Probably not. I think it is part of the process. There's not many very successful people who've never had huge failures, if you think about it.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, that's something that I've read about. Another podcast show that I'm listening to that I think is cool talks about a lot of examples. The Investors Podcast of business people and business minds and business models that, I'm just engulfing myself in these different people that have had major successes off of many.
Yeah, failure's not a bad thing. I could sit here all night and talk about examples, but I'll give you one more. I was listening to John Lee Dumas, and he does a podcast where he interviews entrepreneurs. And he was interviewing this guy, and I can't remember who the guy was now, but the guy was a billionaire, and he had multiple companies. He was an entrepreneur, had multiple companies, and one of the guys that ran one of his companies had recently lost like $22 million on this deal, and so $22 million gone. You know?
Yeah.
And JLD said something about oh, I bet you fired that guy, or that guy's not. He said, heck no, I didn't fire him. He said, that's a mistake he will not make again. I guarantee it. He learned from his mistake, and he's still running my company. And so, exactly. You learn from those kind of failures, and just about everybody who's successful has a huge failure.
Yeah, and the failure creates a type of anxiety experience that is a driver to not repeat that.
True.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's really cool if you can think about. I mean, I guess maybe that's what I might want to accomplish the most out of this show is that step on Triadelphia Junior High School that occurred to me, that jiu-jitsu teacher that that told you on the mat this is going on. I mean, if we can realize the commonality that people have with anxieties and experiences inside their head of doubt, that is okay. We can turn that around and totally make that part of what guides us to be successful.
Yeah, I think it can be a good thing. But what do we do about the know-it-all jerk who's just making up stuff because he don't want to sound like an idiot? What about that guy?
Walk away, man. Just walk away. Yeah, it's funny. That's a good question. I don't know if that was a joke or a question.
Yeah, it was kind of a joke. And there's those people out there, right?
There are, and that's a question. How do you deal with difficult people, man? Because they really are probably exploding with this inside. So honestly,
they probably are.
Honestly, if I think my serious answer to a joke would be understand that they're probably really struggling. Now, I'm not saying be some liberal pacifist and let somebody run over you and be a jerk to you and not do anything about it. That ain't it at all. But it probably can help you to understand, like, when people really do have that type of, jerk attitude, they got some stuff going on.
And some people aren't being a jerk. Some people just have to have an answer.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, man, if I'm close enough to somebody, if I'm true, if I can make somebody mad and not lose them as a friend, that's a true friend.
Yes.
I'll call them out. Yeah. I'll say, dude, it's okay not to know,
I can attest to that, audience. He has called me down multiple times.
Nah, man.
As early as this afternoon.
Chris is not one of those guys, dude.
Well, not a friend or not.
No, you're not one of those jerks who thinks you know everything.
Oh, man.
One of those people who thinks they know everything. Let me rephrase. Not everybody's a jerk who does that.
Maybe they are. What are the real life effects of this? I just brainstormed this. Let me hit through this, and then we'll kind of maybe talk a little bit about and wrap it up what we do about it and how to manage it and whatever. But I was just thinking about this as I'm kind of reading down through things on this. What's the big deal? What are the real life effects? Because I like to do that, Craig. In my work in a therapy office, I tell people every time I meet with you the first time, my main idea is, and I think this is part of what helps our therapy go well, to be honest with you. Where are you at now? And where do you want to be? And that's where, I've spent a lot of time with people. Is a simple idea. So we're not like, going way back and getting stuck on back stuff, story, and, and this block and barrier. I'm looking at really where are you at and where you want to be. Where you at, where you want to be. How are we going to get there? What's blocking us? What are the barriers from long ago? Yeah, but, right, So in that sense, I like to think about what are the real life impacts, with the different show topics that we have. So what? Well, this is what I came up with is when I thought about this. First of all, anxiety, real life effects of the imposter syndrome, anxiety. But if you think further, limiting our courage to go after new opportunities, how much of a bummer is that? If we're not harnessing this anxiety as an energy to go forward and be successful, the opposite of that is it limits our courage to just go after, new opportunities, right? To explore other interests. That anxiety can, Craig, I can't tell you how many times I'm talking with people in a therapy session where boom, they're stuck. They're stuck, and they don't see beyond that anxiety that I don't know enough, I can't do enough, I'm not good, whatever. And it's a bummer, and it's a real impact. Taking risks. You simply stop taking risks when anxiety is debilitating or triggers an inability to kind of function. putting ourselves out there. We talked about making friends and talking to people. You end up getting to the point where you don't reach out. I looked at real life impacts. I don't know. I use this as an example. It affects new therapists. I can attest to that. I've worked with a lot of new therapists doing some research and kind of working with supervision and this type of thing. And I can certainly say, as a young therapist myself, it's kind of like, man, here it is. I don't want to harm anybody. I don't want to screw up. We're talking about suicide here, or depression, or holy cow, like, I don't want to, I'm not prepared for this. I don't know what to say. What am I supposed to do? That's normal. It's normal for a therapist that's new. Normal for other people that's new. In their industry and just whatever, Suffocating in action, someone might think better to do nothing than to make a mistake. Inaction. So these are some things that just I brainstormed that are, I think, real life realities when you're really getting hit with these anxiety points. It stops people. It nails people. It's that this is the why we want to really get the message out or have a good conversation, as I think we have, about how normal it is, and now we'll go into what to do about it a little bit. But do you get the idea? Like, it can really crush people.
If you're afraid of something, if you're afraid of being exposed or afraid, it's a fear thing, right?
Yes.
I'm afraid of doing that because of whatever.
It might blow up in my face. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah. Right. And do you think that's more of a mindset thing, though? I mean, Carol Dweck wrote a book. I do. And I'll put a link on the.
You got a lot of links and books you just mentioned, man. You better write all this down.
Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset, and Mindset: The New Psychology of Success. And basically, what she's theorizing in this book, and I believe she's right, is that people fall into these two categories. They either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And the fixed mindset says, I'm born with these skills, or I'm born with this, and that's all I'm ever going to have. And the growth mindset says, well, I'm born with this, but I can improve. I can work at it and get better at it. Like, how many times have you heard, myself included, say, "Oh, I'm bad at math."
Set a goal and go after it. Yeah.
So I think I suck at math, but the reality is, if I study and take some classes, maybe get on YouTube. What's the YouTube channel that's got the math teacher on there? Anyhow, I can get better.
I know what you're talking about.
I can get better. Khan Academy. I can get better at math if I put some effort into that. But, so that kind of goes along with what you're saying there. You think you got this and you're afraid to go out there and fail at it because you have more of a fixed type mindset versus this growth mindset.
Yeah.
Where I go out there and say, well, I'm going to try, and failure is going to teach me some lessons. And failure it's going to make me better. And I'm going to continue to get better the more I practice.
I talk about the Tale of Two Tapes as an overview of mental health, the biological reality and the social and emotional reality I've talked about on the show before.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Yes, I see this stuff as very much a mindset, because when you're looking at the kind of the things that we're talking about today versus things that we've talked about before that are really sort of equally on the biological component. None of this imposter syndrome stuff is the biological component.
Right.
Not really at all.
Yeah.
That we understand anyway.
Yeah.
It may be, endocrine system and neurological neurotransmitters or hormonal systems or whatever. Maybe we don't understand it yet, but nothing that we know of biologically kind of drives a lot of these types of things that we're talking about with imposter syndrome. It's an experience, mindset.
It's a mindset issue, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm not sure. I don't want to, stake my career on that. Anxiety, though, on the other hand, is a biological component. It isn't a mindset. And I want to really draw that distinction strongly here, because there's a lot of problems, I think, that we still have in society where people have real mental health conditions, and we're stigmatized or what's the word where you're put down for it, or what's the word I'm looking for?
You put down for being
a bipolar patient, or for having depression, or stereotyped and stigmatized. God, there's another word. I'm just brain farting on it, but But I don't want people in mental health to feel that they're in a one-down position. I don't want there to be, God, what's the word? That's going to kill me. What is it? Ostracized, there's a word that I'm thinking of, like, racial discrimination. Discriminated against. There is a lot of discrimination around mental health that is an undercurrent of stigmas and stereotypes. It's one of the primary points of our show. Blowing up myths and stereotypes. Because that doesn't need to be. So yeah, this particular stuff is a little bit of a mindset, Craig. But let's be careful about discrimination and stigmatizing people that have a biological condition called depression or bipolar disorder or dysthymic disorder or agoraphobia or OCD, and on and on and on it goes, because that's a biological reality as much as a social and emotional mindset, if you will. Sorry to go off on a rant, but I
think depression and anxiety, those are much deeper things than imposter syndrome, right? I mean, that could obviously, I guess they could drive that, but if you're just not doing something because you're afraid or scared of failure or being exposed as an imposter, that's a different story than being outright depressed or bipolar or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. Not as bad as it used to be, Craig, but honestly, man, I mean, early on in my career, you gotta understand, I go back enough in my field to remember a day when people wouldn't even be given health insurance benefits for their mental health condition. So they couldn't even go get treatment. So that's why I get kind of a little hot when I think of that type of stuff, because people have been just ostracized, to use your word, and shut into a state of isolation because of that. And it's wrong. It doesn't need to happen. So
I think mental health ought to be funded probably more than other things. I think we've talked about it before, but I think it starts with the mind.
Yeah. A lot of medical stuff. Yeah, we've talked about medical treatment being so correlated together. How do we cope, man? Real question is, how do I manage anxiety? Didn't we do a show recently on anxiety? Stuff starting to blend together a little bit for me. That's a scary reality. But I think we did, didn't we?
We did.
We did, yeah.
We did a show on anxiety, yeah.
I didn't even do that this time. My show prep sucked. I didn't say, hey, go check out episode whatever. What was that? Do you know?
I don't remember. I can look it up.
Look that up and see. Let's add that to the show notes and we'll write it on here. But your good old friend Craig, self-talk. You wanted to do a whole show on that. I think we really got to look at, what is that dialogue that goes on in our head? We talk to ourselves a lot. We got a lot of self-messages, and we tend to spin that off into a negative direction. And dang, that kills us when we do that to ourselves. So we want to really turn that around. Basic cognitive behavioral therapy, it's kind of reframing stuff. I'm looking at people's statements all the time and working with them to reframe their thoughts about what they're saying and doing. So self-talk is a huge piece here. You got the number?
I'm working on it.
I thought you looked ready, man. Here's another one: how to cope. Ask for help. The soloist type, I guess they identified before. So this, by the way, is just my brainstorming. I sat there for a little while and kind of thought about, well, what do you do about the imposter syndrome? As I was thinking about it for a little while, and I thought, well, these are the things that you kind of want to really look at doing, right? So self-talk, examining, asking the question. The real question is, how do I manage anxiety? We have got to learn how to ask others for help. You don't want to just be on your own, be in your own world, doing your own thing. There's a cool phrase, man. Relying on yourself is the definition of stupidity. Or did I just make that up? I think I just made up a quote, man.
I have to write that one down.
Relying on yourself is the definition of stupidity.
I like it.
Yeah, I really do want to write that down.
Good thing we're recording. We got to record it.
Yeah, I got to listen back to it. Cool, man.
We'll run it back.
That's good. Realize a good definition for an expert, right? I think we talked about this recently on a show. Knowing one more thing than the other person in the room. That's it. I've heard that one where or another somewhere. That's an expert. You don't need to be Mr. Depth on knowing everything about astrophysicism to be an expert on it. If you go to a Cub Scout meeting and you know what a supernova is and you can have a paragraph type conversation on a supernova, you're an expert to those Cub Scouts, right? I mean, they're going to be amazed. Now, you go up in UNCC, Charlotte's University, and you go to the astrophysicist professor and you sit down and try to tell him about a supernova and you don't know much, he's not going to think you're an expert, right? So I just think that's a cool definition. Another thing in my rusings in my brain, due diligence. Due diligence. Like, do your work. If you don't want to feel like an imposter, then do a little bit of learning. Realize you gotta pay to get it in. You gotta pay your dues to get in, and put some work into it. Now, that's different than the perfectionism, though, right? You don't want to have to go along the lines of perfectionism to do your due diligence. Realize what due diligence means. Developing a willingness to make mistakes. They teach us best. You said that a little bit ago, Craig, right? You have got to be willing to make a mistake in order to do well. Learn to speak your mind. Some people don't really talk about what they're thinking, what their opinions are. Know it's an opinion, and be comfortable and learn how to speak your mind, along with the idea of making mistakes. I'm on letter H, Craig. You ready for letter H?
Yeah, man.
Admit faults. That one sucks. But when you screw up, say you screwed up. Kind of like you were saying. You ask me a question about therapy, I don't know it. I'll say, I don't really know, man. I have to go figure that one out and go find out for you, and I'll get back to you. Admit your faults. Acknowledge your doubt openly. Let me pause here on this one. Acknowledge your doubts directly, fully, and instantly. Let me borrow from Alcoholics Anonymous for a moment. That is an awesome program. They have 12 steps that people have taken to be free from the horrors of addiction. That 12-step process starts with one very simple reality. And it's in the first step. And the first step starts with the idea of admitting to ourselves and others that our lives have become unmanageable. Whole full seminars have come on that. Listen, if you are feeling doubtful, if you are questioning your ability and you want to feel better, simply acknowledge that that's the case. And then, boom, I guarantee you might not feel perfect. You might not feel all smart inside. You might not feel, like you got this thing licked, but you will feel immediately better because that pressure to hide that sucks. So, dramatic enough pause and on this idea to admit what's kind of going on and acknowledge these things openly.
Yeah, man, you did good.
Right?
Yep.
It's powerful reality. And it's the first thing that you have to do when you're coming out of the throes of addiction.
Right.
All right. Moving on, lastly, understand your strengths and weaknesses. Celebrate them what you do well. It's not arrogant. You say, I do this well. It's good. It solidifies it. It helps, to repeat it, to replicate it, to move into it. Just acknowledge when you're good at something. That's okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of people try to be humble.
Yeah.
We talked about humility earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's okay to acknowledge that you've done something well. Well, I'll go back to jiu-jitsu again. I got one of the guys I train with, man. He works really hard at it. He's in the gym whenever he can be. And he did something one day, and somebody said something about it, and he alluded to being lucky. And I get lucky every now and then, and I'm like, dude, you're not lucky. You've been working your butt off.
Yeah.
It's okay to say thank you. I mean, I believe that. You think that's wrong?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think it's on my ramblings in my brain on how to cope with imposter syndrome. When you're good at something, say it. It's okay.
Yeah.
A humble way to say it. I heard.
Don't be cocky and arrogant.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I've been working hard.
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
I've worked hard at this.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody. I was shooting pool. I had a decent stick for a college guy. Nothing special, but I repeat this thing when somebody gives a compliment or whatever. I complimented this guy on his pool game, and he looked at me and he's like, yeah, well, thanks. I really appreciate that. I really enjoy the game.
Hey,
I mean, he smoked me is what he did.
Yeah.
And he knew he was really good.
Yeah.
But that was a nice way of saying, you know what? I'm passionate about pool. And that he was saying, you know, I've worked hard at this. It was a nice way to kind of celebrate for a moment. Like, yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thanks for the compliment.
Yeah. I agree. I respect that kind of thing, man.
You know, I'm passionate about mental health. Somebody in my office just the other day said he listened to a show. He's kind of like, you know, yeah, I could tell he complimented you, by the way.
Oh, great.
You know, he really did, which I hear from some clients that I've talked to directly. You might not hear as directly. Hey, audience out in the world, shoot some praise in for Craig. He's awesome.
Sweet.
We need to pump him up a little bit, man, because he does an awesome job, and he did give you a compliment.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm awesome.
There you go. There you go. And what he said was, it's clear that you guys
Dude,
enjoy
I'm
this.
totally kidding. Man.
No,
I think my voice sounds terrible. I mean.
What he said was, it's clear that we enjoy doing this, Craig.
Yeah, okay, I get that.
Right? And I just said, you know what? Thank you, because
if he's listening, thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah. And, you know, good. Yeah,
because I do enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, you've said it. It's like a highlight of our week, and I think it shows. So it's just accept that praise, accept that compliment, feel good about it, but then also know your weaknesses and work towards them. So that's what I came up with, how to manage it. How did I do?
You did great. I think those are very good points.
You know, they usually have like articles of 5 management tools for imposter syndrome or some crap like that, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dude, I came up with 10.
So did you actually come up with 10, or did you go to like 2 of those 5-step websites and just compile?
That was my own thoughts, man.
Okay, good.
I think
now,
it's pure.
Now you can write 2 articles.
I know, right?
5 steps to manage imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
5 steps continued.
I will say I did see some of those types of articles and stuff out there, man.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I've written a 5-step article. 5 steps why jiu-jitsu is a superpower.
You wrote it?
Yeah, it's on LinkedIn.
Really?
Yeah. You guys are listening, go check it out.
All right, cool. Well, that
5
is cool.
steps,
Check
baby.
that out, man.
That's right, man.
Hey, everything's got to be a number, you know? So let me ask you from your perspective, not even realizing, Craig, that we were talking about imposter syndrome, or even kind of, I think you said you hadn't heard of it, and then we sort of identified it a little bit, and you said, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. But what is your sort of takeaways? What do you get from this? What's your brain doing with this topic?
Well, I mean, I think you threw me a curve, because I thought imposter syndrome was somebody who was really portraying themselves as someone that they're not, because that's easy to do these days with all the social media things.
Oh, yeah, you meant like catfishing, or what's the term where you misrepresent yourself?
Yeah, whatever. You know, I go rent a Porsche and say, hey, my new car, you know, whatever the deal is. But, you know, so I think I got a better understanding of what it actually is, and maybe some underlying causes of it, talking about anxiety and how that plays in. And then I think those things about how to manage it that you shared are good. Yeah, I'm definitely educated. I'm enlightened on imposter syndrome. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, to me, about anxiety, and as with several things in mental health, you know, taking something that you're experiencing that's uncomfortable and turning it around into something that can really work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, you know, when I'm working with people in my office, I really, it's not blowing smoke at issues. It's not some smoke and mirrors and tricks with cognitive reframing and tricking people into, you know, thinking something that really sucks is good. It's really about using what we got. You know, we've got God-given abilities. We've got, you know, our bodies that were created in the way that they are, certainly faulty as they might be, but they can be used to really move us in a good direction. You mentioned Winston Churchill. I really do want to see that show, because I watched the 2 movies, you know, Dunkirk and then I think the name of the movie was Winston Churchill, and those 2 followed up beautifully because it really characterized him. Man, dude, he went through some horrible emotional shit in his life, it sounds like. That guy was tore up emotionally. And
he definitely did, yeah.
You know, but
I knew that he was, what they call him, the lion, the old lion or something, because he would not surrender to Germany.
Yeah, he was crotchety. He was a difficult person. He drank.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he drank a lot.
I don't
mean he drank, and that's bad. He drank a lot. He smoked. He was unhealthy. He was mean. But But he was able to grab those things and lead arguably the world out of a direction that would have killed us.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Churchill, we might be in a whole different world these days.
We would
Because
be
he
done.
would not succumb. He would not surrender to the Nazis, man.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to do it.
We were sitting on the sideline at the time. And
Yeah,
he
they
said,
would-
no, we're fighting them.
Yeah, he would have had to have personally been killed before he would have.
And he was the only one that was saying that.
Yeah, but yeah, going back to his childhood, he had a difficult emotional upbringing.
Yeah. Comes out of tore up emotional health.
We talk about how much kids these days get pampered. Man, Churchill did not get pampered.
No, was not born
can
with a
you
silver
imagine
spoon
sending
in
your
his
kid
mouth.
off to boarding school and seeing him once a year?
I can't.
Dude, they read a letter about him begging his mom to come see him,
Oh, gosh.
and she wouldn't.
Really?
Yeah, she was too busy socializing and
Man. Wow.
terrible.
Yeah,
It's kind of heartbreaking,
it
but
is heartbreaking.
otherwise we wouldn't have Churchill.
In the form that
Thank God his parents were assholes.
in a way, right?
Excuse my language, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because if not, he wouldn't, there would have been no Churchill to stand down Hitler.
And this is what I'm saying. We can use these things like syndromes, if you will, and put some power in our lives for positive direction.
Yep.
Take us out of here. I'll tell you where we're going next. You ready for that?
Yeah, I'm ready for that. ThroughItTherapistDies.com, folks. We have entries for just about every show. Well, we do have entries for every single show.
Yeah.
Because I personally put them out there.
There you go.
I think we're on 51 or 52 now, so we've got a lot of great content. We're starting to publish little short episodes for people who are strapped for time, trying to provide some valuable content that way.
Let me interrupt you, Craig. Did you figure out that episode?
17.
Episode 17.
Episode 17 on anxiety, and I will include that in the notes too. We also have links to our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube channel. There's an email list you can sign up for on our website. So go to ThroughItTherapistDies.com. Folks, tell your friends. That is the best way to get the word out about anything. And we want to spread the word about the things we talk about on this show. And that'd be a great help to us if you would do that. Where are we headed, man?
Got a movie that I want people to watch. Okay.
Okay.
It is an awesome movie. I want you to watch this, audience, really and truly, because it'll help with our discussion on a topic. I'm not exactly sure what all I want to do with the topic, but I think I have some ideas, some offshoots to this topic that will be interesting insofar as a societal level. But I want to talk about schizophrenia next week. We haven't done a specific sort of diagnostic show in a little while. And I think that that's something that's really misunderstood and kind of not really gotten, and it has a lot of mystery about it. And it's kind of like, ooh, those crazy people, man. I mean, if you ever hear people talk about, I'm crazy, I don't want to get a diagnosis because I don't want to be called crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a natural fear that people have. Well, the closest you can get to being crazy, in the way that people talk about being crazy, is having a hard time with reality testing. And that's a way of saying hallucinations. So I want to take the mystery out of that thing. And that movie, A Beautiful Mind. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yes, it's a great movie.
It is awesome. And I'm going to tell you, it's a really good description of what somebody who has schizophrenia goes through. Like, that's what they experience. That's the way their life kind of even progresses.
Yeah.
They did an excellent job. A, just making a fun show to watch, but B, capturing the experience of a schizophrenic mental health patient.
Yeah, that's going to be a good conversation because I've
Good,
got
yeah.
some questions about that already.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think Russell Crowe won an Academy Award for that.
He probably did. It was really well done.
Really good movie.
So write your questions down. Send the audience, your questions in.
He got off the drugs too. The dude did.
Oh, he was drug free?
Yeah.
That's a true story.
He learned how to deal with it.
That's part of what I want to look up. Is it really a true story? And what are some of the interviews about?
I'm pretty sure that part's true, but I don't want to be a spoiler.
Yeah, I'm gonna play. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I hope we didn't just spoil something, but
yeah, it's
be
nothing you
careful
can't
about
find
that.
on Google.
This is true. This is true. Watch A Beautiful Mind, and we'll be talking about schizophrenia, a review, and different societal factors with it next week. Have a great time, guys. We'll see you then.